Hello, everyone. Welcome to my talk, Imploding Silos with Games and Behavioral Science. Thank you very much for joining me today. So, a bit about me. I am a fractional CTO. So I try to guide teams towards operational excellence. I also have 30 years of experience in open source and technology, and the reason why I'm so much into inner source is because being a having grown up in the tech in the tech community in Thailand, I basically owe everything I know uh, to open source, and I feel that it is a very powerful movement in terms of educating and upskilling and collaboration, and that is why I'm passionate about bringing in this into organizations as part of my toolkit. And I realized also that at some point I have been applying a fair bit of behavioral science and gamifications for operational excellence, but have recently started formalizing it. So please bear with me during this talk. If any part of this is unclear, feel free to let me know in the Q&A. I'm happy to answer questions. I have also been a TEDx speaker on education, and I co-organized FOSS Asia Thailand, the region's premier open source conference. So if you are around in March, please join us in Bangkok next year. We would love to have you. So let us talk a little about the inner source paradox and why it's not fulfilling its potential. I have done a few consultancies. I have gone in as part of teams. I've gone in individually to implement inner source. And as you can imagine, the vast majority of implementation of inner source has been in very hierarchical organizations, and with an emphasis on the work culture of East Asia, where seniority is a big deal, right? And so what happens is that there tends to be a clash between this strict hierarchy and the more sort of freestyle way of collaborating, which is the inner source, and there's always been this. I find that this tension, and I feel that even though people are doing inner source, but they're not doing inner source the way that they're doing open source, right? And that has always puzzled me because for me, working in the open source way has always been very natural. And I can't, and it was very difficult for me to figure out why it wasn't natural for everyone else, right? So this doesn't give you the entire picture, but I think that it's a very important part of it. Right? A large part of this comes to the way that we approach inner source as a discretionary effort, right? So oftentimes inner source either um, had to be implemented through asking, assuming that there are people out in the organization who are really take pride in their work and who do want to collaborate and who want to step up and spearhead this effort, a community style. Or some are even coerced, right? Management has given them order in order to do so. And what I realize is that often there's a lot of friction because inner source, the effort um, competes with people's time and focus, and often causes it to fizzle out after the first phase, right? And the other issue that I've had, the feedback I've gotten is that the cross-team contributions don't appear on performance records, right? And there's a real issue in quantification in quantifying this. So most most organizations try to solve this problem using sorry, back there for a moment. So most organizations try to solve this using transaction tools, right? We set up Slack, we set up a whole bunch of other tools, but then but it doesn't quite work out because I realized that that the problem is motivation. It's not about the toolings. It's about motivation. You know, how to get people to start contributing. So rather than saying how can we make people do this? I think that the key is how can we make people want to do this? So whereas let's step back a bit. My assumption with open source has always been that okay, we all love creating things, right? We all love doing a good job at the end of the day. And just by having inner source unlocking this, people will automatically start to collaborate. But it happens. Of course, it happens. But I feel that at a certain point, the effort that is required in collaboration and the overhead at least in the early phases, becomes quite large, and there's so much friction that people cannot overcome it. So I thinking a lot about this. I think that we should be organizing systems for motivation and not just function. Okay, so these are some reasons why the silo breaking initiatives have failed, right? First of all, is not invented here. People don't write code. People don't trust code that they didn't write, especially if they need to provide guarantees to a third party, right? How do we know that this code works? And so that is a major sticking point across many types of organization and especially highly regulated ones, right? Psychological safety. People are afraid, especially here in East Asia, people don't like to look bad. And so if they commit something and it's of lower quality than is expected, right? They people feel apprehensive about that. Siloed incentives. So oftentimes the promotions, various other incentives, bonuses, vacation time is linked to your team, is linked to the silo. It's linked to your output. It's not linked to cross-team work, right? And I've kind of been guilty of this. So inner source is often famed as a rebellion. We should all be more open, right? But great, but management did not get that memo, right? It also only works in orgs who have hierarchies who are attuned that way, right? But then if it's a established organization with a certain type of siloed culture, that doesn't happen because the behavior of the organization of the teams is tuned towards survival within the context of the silo. That is the safe space for them. breaking it out is exceedingly difficult. So b- before I get into um, the inner source gamification framework, I just want to talk a little about happily.ai. Now, this may sound like a pitch in a way, it probably is, but I'm so impressed by what I saw here that I just want to talk a little about it. And also, I want to give you an idea of what a good or a well-designed framework for employee engagement looks like, just to give you an idea. And this is something that perhaps we should be doing in inner source as well. So what is Happily.ai? It is an employee engagement platform that applies these principles. Employee engagement platform, peer-to-peer recognition, and instant feedback. And I think that the important here thing here is this, right? This number at the bottom. You see here, 97% voluntary adoption, 48 points improvement in the eNPS score, and a 40% reduce turnover. But the voluntary adoption is important, right? Because that's what we're looking for. How do we get so many people to voluntarily adopt open source? Sorry, inner source, right? That is the question. And so the mechanics here are relatively simple enough. There's a 3-minute daily workout. There are questions that are asked. There are feedback that is received. There's a mini dashboard. I'll show you a bit later on. But in a nutshell, that's how it works. And only with these few basic mechanics, um, the system works, and it works extremely well. So some screenshots you see here, it asks you the question, how are you doing today? And it has some other questions. There's a yes, no question. There's a brief survey, right? And this creates psychological safety at the first level. Yeah. And then the next part, it asks questions about skills. It takes feedback about skills. It gives feedback about skills. These feedbacks can be both by either by management, or it can be AI generated. Either way around, this is useful for development. And it also drives accountability in management as well. Again, through all this beautiful gamified interface, right? And just with the 3 minutes per day management a bit more, but just with these short questions. And there are various reinforcements and reward behaviors that is aligned with the business objective of the organization. And then there are other things like team building and whatnot. So I think that this is what I'm looking at. I'm thinking about in terms of applying this to inner source. I think that there needs to be more. I think that the assumption has to be that people need more of psychological scaffolding in order to effectively contribute to inner source, especially during the very, very, very early phases. So, and one thing I wanted to add is that these factors, they're all designed around habit, right? Not compliance. So I think that the key takeaway is, how do we build it up so that we can build the correct collaborative habit and culture um, in an organization. Um, so So in order to do that, right, I have studied a few frameworks. Octalysis seems to be one of the ones that I like the best, possibly because it's also familiar to me. I've studied it the longest. But and there are others like it, of course, but just to give you an idea of what it's all about. So a quick word about gamification. People think of gamification as in games, right? But actually, gamification can also be about behavioral science. Think about like game theory, right? It's not about not so much about rolling a dice, but it's about incentive and possibly about winning, about reaching equilibriums. So I want you to think about gamification also in that dimension. So Octalysis by Yukai Cho maps the 8 core drives, right, behind human motivation. So on top we have what is called epic meaning, and this is why people are into open source, right? Let's create the world's largest collaborative encyclopedia, Wikipedia, right? OpenStreetMap, let's create the most comprehensive map of the world. People in open source are often driven by epic meanings, and I think that many of the early adopters in inner source are also adopted by adopted motivated by epic meaning, right? Accomplishment, a sense of accomplishment when you make a pull request and it's accepted, when you tag something in OpenStreetMap and it appears on the map. That is an accomplishment. There is a part of you that feels joy when that happens, and empowerment and creativity, right? The fact that you spend some time thinking about a problem and solving it creatively. This is also a powerful drive. Programming works that way. So does actually chess, right? If you think about it, the exercise of creativity. Now, these are considered white hat drives, right? These are very, very, very positive drivers, right? Then at the bottom is the anti um, uh, white hat drive, or otherwise the black hat, right? So first one is scarcity, and we see this often. Time is running out. Sale, act now, right? That's scarcity. Unpredictably, core drive 7. Unpredictably is the psychology behind, say, slot machines, right? It's the unpredictable nature of slot machines that makes it heavily, heavily addictive. And avoidance. This is how, let's say, coercion works, right? If you don't do this, you will be punished, or these privileges will be taken away from you, right? So that is avoidance. And then sort of in the middle, social influence and ownership. Um, these are uh, these are the connection points, especially in bureaucratic cultures where peer validation and formal recognition are the primary currencies. So ownership is when you own something. Let's say you receive a badge, right? That's how badge works. You earned it, you own it, right? Or let's say in a game where you create a map and you own the map, or you own a character, or you own an item, right? That is the ownership. While social influence, this is possibly how social media keeps you going, right? Why you post in order to get social acknowledgement, or when you submit a pull request and people hit thumbs up. That's a bit of acknowledgement there. There's a bit of a social influence happening. So everything about to show you is mapped to one of these drives, and you can't really see it, but then we have the number associated for the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and you'll find that Octalysis geeks often refer back to these core drives. Okay, so now, all right. So let's start with phase one, right? The phase one is discovery. You're completely fresh here to this inner source world as the your boss comes up and says, let's do inner source. Like now what, right? So so I still think that the white hat way works the best, but I think that in a deeply hierarchical organization, the the story that once tells oneself the epic meaning needs to be aligned with the value of that hierarchy, right? So you can't just say, oh, you for example, you're doing this to change the world. It doesn't matter. Yeah. So which is why I think that that the inner source charter is very important and signed by a VP or above. And in the charter, there is a sanctioned path to recognition, to promotion. And maybe there can be like a huge event around this, right? You have a stage, you have lights, the VP comes, acknowledges everyone, announces the inner source charter, handshakes, bows, whatever it takes, all around. Make it look important and make people feel that they are part of something grand within this organization, right? So it shows that this is not rebellious. It's not a Slack message, right? This is a real important thing in the organization. Then we have a share the love campaign, right? And this sort of ties the epic meaning into the social influence, right? There is a role of 2 to 3 ambassadors that have been appointed, nominated by relationship, but also it is scarce because there are only 3 positions with the possibility of increasing more. So there is something to earn here, right? It is scarce. Now, for further psychological safety, some sort of a contribution certification scheme, I think it's very important. So you can see that gives ownership, right? There's a sense of accomplishment, but also avoidance, basically fear of missing out. Yeah. You want to be able to join in. And then after that, there is a inner source passport. Um, when you join, it has a stamp, and there are possibly random items in there, a bit like badges. But then it is a proof of contribution, and it is officially acknowledged, right? And the first stamp, because we want people to feel confident about this. So how does it look like? This is a mock-up that I created and an inner source map. So you can see you can start from the front end, and this is your home base, right? And then there's links and lines to where you have contributed to things, yeah. And then on top of that, there's the spooky unexplored paths, right? Which makes it curiosity driven. What is behind the reporting module? What is behind the helper module? And by exploring into these, then I get some sort of a reflection, and it reflects upon my let's say my XPs in my passport, right? Um, and there's a certain level of unpredictability here. Just like a slot machine, what happens when I pull the lever? So what happens when I when I explore these areas? And the other thing that I have borrowed from Happily is the recognition economy, right? So these coins, tokens, whatever you want to call them, you can earn them by contributing code, reviewing PRs, and helping others. So basically, if you've been helpful to someone, people can be given a pool of coins, an allotment of coins to give to people every week or so in order to thank them for their contribution. And this can then be spent on gift cards. They can spend on charity or even HR benefits such as time off, etc., etc. Now we find that this process of transaction has worked extremely well in Happily because through these transactions, relationships are formed. right? When you give to someone in another team, that then becomes a relationship that also, to a certain degree, it becomes trust. So this is, I think, very um, not appreciated enough, and should be tried in more settings. So after we have done the discovery, we now come to the onboarding phase. Sorry, maybe the coins should have belonged in the onboarding. Okay. Anyways, how do we start contributing? So using the gamification framework, I imagine, excuse me, an inner source request board where in fact, I think I'll just show it to you. This is what I have in mind, right? This is a mock-up. And you see there are certain first issues here. There are some top contributors. There are featured projects up there. But and also other things similar to good first issues, right? But basically the idea is that if you don't know where to start, you can just come to the board and then there will be something there for you. So there's a bit of randomness, scarcity, then there's a social influence as well. And then after that, there is a matter of a structured first review, right? Now, I want to emphasize this, but I would like to emphasize that the first review should be paired um, instead of being performed asynchronously. Again, this is to build up that social graph across the silo. It builds up trust, it builds up confidence. And hopefully, it will also reduce anxiety if people know that in the other team there are people who are kind, who really care and appreciate the pull requests and who will mentor kindly. I think that and I've seen this in this part of the world where oftentimes perhaps due to time pressure or whatever, people are very, very brief about in their feedback, and so this causes a lot of anxiety in the person. For example, did I do something wrong? Why is this so gruff? But then when people speak to each other, then there's a calibration happening. They realize, oh, actually, it's not the case. They're not upset that that's just the way that they type, but actually everything is okay. The merge milestone recognition. So the passport is stamped. There's a public announcement. Maybe it comes up on the board that says yes, this person has contributed. Coin is given. Just a lot of psychological reinforcement happening here. And I think that to further add to that, expedition log. The contributor can then also speak a little about their journey, right? A mini review, if you will, and that can be shown to the next person who comes along. So they can see that, okay, that was a good experience, and then they can also have a good experience. But it's also social proof that this is happening, and so they feel that by contributing, they are being part of something bigger. So you see there the Epic Meaning logo. The next part, the scaffolding. So people have jumped in, right? And the next part is to maintain the habit. So a few items here. The contributor rank system. It mirrors the career ladder, and each unlocks autonomy and visibility. and I will show you that in a moment. The other one is cross-pollination reviews. So the established contributors review each other's PRs, and it's rated on quality. And this is a precondition for advancing to the rank. A mentor chain. So this passes it on, right? Every contributor who was mentored becomes a mentor, and their lineage is then tracked on the map, right? So again, people can see how people have progressed, but this is also sort of a trail that can be used when you're doing things like performance reviews later on. And a dispatch system. And I think this is quite nice, where you get a message highlighting something special about your impact. And so I think that this is a mock-up. So you can see that where this person has contributed to, the reviews they're given, which phase they are for the different ranks, right? That kind of thing. So this is sort of mid-journey, but the important thing is that progress is always visible. The next milestone is always inside, and I think that the fact that it's always inside is a core motivational driver here. Okay, so the next part is that, okay, so you have been here for a while, you've been contributing for a while, you become a senior now. Now what? So this is where things actually matter. This is what career progressions is made of. So one of them is the inner source council, right? So the top contributors can advise engineering leaderships quarterly, and the recommendations go to the VP with the names on the document. The trusted committer, a nomination. So with this one, the host team's engineering lead needs to nominate you. And this again builds up trust, and it is something to be earned. It breaks down silos, and leads to a sense of real achievement, right? And a real confidence in working across your teams. The trusted committer title, this is something that we are probably familiar with already, but I've added an emphasis here that it should be a formal HR role. And it should be referenced in the promotional decisions. And something that I term as seasonal expeditions. So maybe twice yearly organization-wide contribution events themed by the Inner Source Council. And I think that this is another activity that can lead to social bonds forming, trust building up, and can be considered in HR. So I think that within all this, it connects to the organization's real rewarding system. And again, this will give people the motivation based on things that they value within a very hierarchical organization. And this is an acceptance screen that is mocked up. So you can see here the end game is always in sight, right? So you can go from the phase one in Explorer, and then as you build up the rank, you reach the level of trusted committer. the clarity here builds up the motivation. So just a quick thing before I close. I think I'm starting to think that public leaderboards ranked by volume, it creates a fair bit of anxiety, and people start gaming the metrics instead of doing a real contributions. So perhaps these should be avoided. The other thing is that purely intrinsic framing. I think that it is maybe a bit too a bit too ideological, maybe a bit too optimistic. For a lot of people, they don't buy it. So which is why more sophisticated psychological scaffolding must be considered. And the other thing that I find can backfire badly are mandatory participations or quotas, right? This just creates burnout. People have a really, really bad taste in their mouth at the end of it. So I think that um, for this is for further discussion, but I think that these can be this should be considered anti-patterns and avoided. So lastly, I just wanted to add, start small, right? I think that you pick one phase, yeah, even just say something like the charter and the passport. They are meaningful starts, right? Make it official. So get leadership to co-sign it. Um, yeah. So the leadership signing it really really changes everything, and I think it's the core trigger for motivation. And then make it count. So this is when it counts in the context of things like HR records. So that's it for me. Thank you very much, and we are open for questions.